Before we begin, find a comfortable place to rest. Let your breathing slow. What follows is a story told without urgency. A journey into a world where time dissolves, where the sun never rises, and where sleep becomes a practiced art in the most unlikely of places. For 3 months at a time, men live sealed inside a steel tube beneath the ocean, adapting to rhythms that have nothing to do with day or night. This is how they sleep. This is how they survive. The hatch closes with a sound that carries finality. It is a heavy mechanical thud, steel meeting steel, threads turning, pressure equalizing. The last rectangle of sky disappears. The last breath of unprocessed air is replaced by the first push of ventilation through the ducts. On the deck above, the crew can still see the dock, the families waving, the solid line of land against the horizon. But that view will not last. The submarine slides beneath the surface without drama. There is no plunge, no sudden drop. The vessel simply sinks, degree by degree, until the waterline rises past the sail and the deck is swallowed by the Pacific. The motion is smooth, the angle is gentle. Inside, the crew feels only a subtle shift in equilibrium, a faint pressure change in the ears. The world above, the wind, the weather, the open sky ceases to exist. For the next 90 days there will be no windows, no viewports, no glass of any kind connecting the interior to the ocean outside. The hull is solid, seamless, designed to withstand crushing pressure at depths where sunlight cannot penetrate. The crew is sealed inside a capsule of artificial atmosphere, floating through absolute darkness. They will not see the sun. They will not feel rain. They will not breathe air that has not been processed by machines. The departure is always the same. The families on the pier grow smaller, then vanish. The coastline fades into a grey line, then nothing. The submarine moves away from the continental shelf, out into deeper water where the ocean floor drops away for thousands of feet. The surface becomes irrelevant. The vessel is no longer travelling on the water, it is travelling through it, suspended in a medium that presses against every inch of the hull with patient, unrelenting force. The crew knows what lies ahead. Most of them have done this before. They have learned that the first few days are the hardest, not because of danger, but because of adjustment. The body resists confinement. The mind searches for familiar cues and finds none. The transition from surface life to underwater existence is not immediate. It unfolds gradually, in stages, as the sailors begin to adapt to an environment that operates by rules entirely different from the world they have left behind. The submarine settles into its patrol depth. The dive is complete. The ocean closes over them like a door. The bunks are called racks. They are metal pans with thin mattresses stacked 3 high in compartments that smell of hydraulic fluid, floor wax, and the faint chemical tang of amine, the substance used to scrub carbon dioxide from the air. Each rack measures roughly 6 feet long and 2 feet wide, with about 18 inches of vertical clearance between the mattress and the overhead. There is no headroom. A sailor lying on his back can reach up and touch the ceiling with his palm flat against the painted steel. The first night no one sleeps well. The noise is constant. It is not loud, but it is everywhere. The ventilation fans run without pause, pushing recycled air through ducts and vents. The steam plant hums in the engineering spaces. The reduction gears turn with a low mechanical thrum that travels through the hull and vibrates in the bones. There is no silence. Even in the berthing compartments, where the lights are dimmed and the crew lies still, the submarine continues to breathe and hum and vibrate like a living organism. Sailors lie in their racks with the curtains drawn. The curtain is the fourth wall, a pleated vinyl panel that pulls across the open side of the bunk, creating the only private space on the entire boat. Behind that curtain, a sailor is alone. The world outside ceases to matter. The narrow rectangle becomes the entire universe, mattress, pillow, a small reading light clipped to the overhead, and whatever photographs or drawings the sailor has taped to the ceiling inches from his nose. But on the first night, the curtain does not create peace, it creates awareness. The sailor lies on his back, eyes open, staring at the steel overhead. He hears everything. The ventilation is too loud, the mattress is too thin, the pillow smells wrong, the air tastes metallic. The submarine smell, a blend of diesel, ozone, machine oil, and recycled breath. fills his lungs and coats the back of his throat. He shifts position, trying to find comfort in a space too narrow to turn over without bumping elbows against the walls. In the racks near the outer hull there are other sounds. Water rushes past the steel skin with a high-pitched screeching noise, like wind through a narrow gap. Shrimp click and snap in the ocean beyond, a sound that resembles frying bacon. Occasionally a whale sings, low, resonant notes that penetrate the hull with surprising clarity, echoing through the compartment like the voice of something vast and incomprehensible. The ocean is only 2 inches away, separated from the sailor's body by a thin layer of high-yield steel and some rubber tiling. The awareness of that proximity is inescapable. The crew lies awake, adjusting. Some read by the light of their personal lamps, some stare at the overhead. Some close their eyes and try to will themselves into unconsciousness. The watch rotation has already begun, 6 hours on, 12 hours off, but the body does not yet understand this rhythm. The circadian system is still calibrated to the sun, which no longer exists. The mind resists the artificial schedule, searching for the cues it has relied on for a lifetime. The dimming of daylight, the cooling of evening air, the sound of crickets or traffic or wind in trees. None of these exist here. Time passes slowly. The fluorescent lights in the passageways remain at full brightness. There is no night, only the arbitrary designation of night hours, when some parts of the boat rig grow red, switching off the white overheads and turning on low red lamps to preserve the night vision of the control room crew. In the berthing compartments, the lights are dimmed but never fully dark. The glow of exit signs and instrument panels casts faint shadows across the rows of stacked bunks. Sleep, when it finally comes, is shallow and fragmented. The body does not trust this place yet. The mind does not accept the hum as background. Every sound is catalogued, analysed, suspected of meaning, danger or malfunction. The sailor wakes every hour disoriented, uncertain whether he has been asleep for minutes or much longer. The curtain is still drawn. The air still smells wrong. The ocean still rushes past the hull. Morning comes not because the sun rises, but because the clock says it is morning. A messenger of the watch moves quietly through the darkened compartment, finding specific racks and gently shaking the shoulders of the sailors who must wake to relieve the watch. There are no alarm clocks. The wake-up is human, soft-spoken, personal. The transition from sleep to duty is as gentle as it can be in a place where there is no such thing as a gentle day. The first night ends, the first day begins, the cycle continues. By the 3rd or 4th day something shifts. The noise does not stop. The ventilation fans still run. The steam plant still hums. The reduction gears still turn with their steady mechanical rhythm. But the sailors stop hearing it. The sound becomes part of the baseline, like the feeling of clothes against skin or the pressure of gravity, present, constant, and beneath the threshold of conscious attention. This adaptation is not a choice. It happens automatically as the brain learns to filter out stimuli that do not change and do not signal danger. The hum is analysed, categorised and dismissed. It becomes the new soul, the new silence. Sailors can hold conversations in the mess deck without raising their voices. They can sleep in their racks without earplugs. The mechanical drone that once filled their awareness now occupies no space at all. But the absence of the hum, that is what wakes them. If the ventilation fans stop, the sudden quiet jolts a sailor out of deep sleep. The silence is wrong. It signals malfunction, loss of power, potential crisis. The brain, which has learned to ignore the noise, has also learned to rely on it. The hum has become the heartbeat of the boat. When it stops, every sailor knows immediately, even in sleep. They open their eyes in the darkness of their racks, listening, waiting for the sound to return or for the emergency alarm to follow. This shift marks the beginning of true adaptation. The submarine is no longer an alien environment. It is becoming familiar. The body begins to accept the reality that this sealed tube of recycled air and artificial light is now home. The rhythms of the boat, watch rotations, meal times, maintenance schedules start to replace the rhythms of the surface world. The crew moves through the passageways with increasing confidence, no longer startled by the narrow corridors or the low overheads. They know which pipes are hot, which hatches are heavy, which turns require ducking or stepping over knee knockers. The olfactory system adapts as well. The submarine smell, that distinctive blend of amine, diesel, hydraulic fluid, ozone and floor wax, stops registering as unpleasant or even noticeable. It permeates everything. Uniforms, bedding, skin, hair. Sailors carry it with them even when they sleep. When they wake, the smell is simply the smell of the air, no more remarkable than the scent of their own breath. They will not realise how strong it is until the patrol ends and they open their sea bags at home, releasing the concentrated essence of 3 months underwater into a living room that has known only fresh air. The air itself is different here. It is drier than desert air, pulled of moisture by the machinery that processes it. Lips crack, skin flakes. The crew applies chapstick and lotion as part of their daily routine, fighting the constant dehydration that comes from breathing atmosphere that has been chemically scrubbed and mechanically circulated. The oxygen content is slightly lower than at sea level, a deliberate choice to reduce fire risk. This creates a subtle, persistent sense of lethargy, a feeling of being slowed down, as though moving through a medium thicker than normal air. It is not unpleasant. It softens the edges of alertness, making rest come more easily and wakefulness feel less urgent. The crew stops thinking about the ocean outside. In the beginning, the awareness of the water, millions of gallons of it, pressing against the hull with thousands of pounds of force per square inch, is almost overwhelming. But the mind cannot sustain that level of vigilance. The submarine has been engineered to withstand this pressure. The steel does not buckle. The seals do not fail. The ocean becomes theoretical, something known but not felt. The sailors move through their routines as though they are in a building, not a vessel. The fact that they are suspended in water miles from the nearest solid ground ceases to occupy their thoughts. Sleep improves. The racks, once uncomfortable, now feel familiar. The thin mattress conforms to the shape of the body. The narrow space no longer feels confining but cosy, womb-like. The curtain is no longer a barrier against loneliness, but a shield that creates sanctuary. Behind that drawn panel of vinyl, the sailor can close his eyes without fear of being observed, without the social pressure to remain alert or engaged. The rack becomes the one place on the boat where the self can fully relax. Dreams change. In the first days, sailors often dream of the surface, of walking on grass, of driving cars, of standing in sunlight. But as the patrol progresses, these dreams fade. The brain begins to accept the submarine as reality. Dreams take place in the compartments and passageways of the boat. The crew appears in sleep as they appear in waking life, dressed in blue coveralls, moving through narrow hatches, standing watch at their stations. The unconscious mind has adapted to the environment as thoroughly as the conscious mind. By the end of the first week, the sailors are no longer visitors in this world. They are residents. The hum has disappeared. The smell has faded. The confinement feels normal. The submarine, which once seemed alien and hostile, has become the only place that makes sense. The surface world, the one with weather and horizons and the sun, begins to feel abstract, distant, like a memory from childhood or a story someone once told. The rack is not designed for comfort. It is designed for efficiency. Every square inch of the submarine serves a purpose, and the purpose of the berthing compartments is to store as many sleeping sailors as possible in the smallest possible space. The racks are stacked 3 high, welded to the bulkheads in rows that line both sides of the compartment. The vertical clearance between each tier is just enough for a human body to lie flat, nothing more. A sailor enters his rack from the side, the only open edge. He sits on the mattress, swings his legs in, and leans back, pulling the curtain closed behind him. There is no room to sit upright. The overhead is perhaps 18 inches from his face, sometimes less. If he extends his arms to the sides, his elbows touch the walls. If he stretches his legs fully, his toes brush the far end. The space is a perfect fit for the human form, with no allowance for movement beyond the minimal adjustments of sleep. Beneath the mattress is the coffin locker, a shallow storage compartment accessible only by lifting the thin foam pad. This is where the sailor keeps everything he owns for the duration of the patrol: a change of uniform, a few civilian clothes for port visits that may or may not happen, toiletries, books, letters from home, and whatever small personal items he could fit into his sea bag. The locker is not deep. A A sailor cannot fold his clothes neatly, they must be rolled or compressed. Accessing the locker requires a deliberate sequence of movements. Remove the pillow, lift the mattress, retrieve the item, lower the mattress, replace the pillow. This enforced slowness becomes part of the rhythm of submarine life. There is no rushing. Haste leads to bumped heads, dropped items, and frustration into a space too small for careless motion. The fourth wall of the rack is the curtain. It is pleated vinyl, usually in a neutral colour, tan, grey, blue, and it slides along a metal rail. When drawn, it creates the illusion of privacy in a compartment that houses 60 men sleeping within a few feet of one another. The curtain is a universal signal. If it is closed, the sailor inside is either sleeping or wishes to be alone. No one disturbs a drawn curtain without urgent cause. This unspoken rule is one of the pillars of submarine etiquette. In a world where privacy does not exist, the curtain is the only boundary that is respected absolutely. Inside the rack, the sailor has personalised his space as much as the environment allows. Photographs are taped to the overhead. Family, friends, a girlfriend, a wife, children. These images are the last thing he sees before closing his eyes and the first thing he sees upon waking. Because the ceiling is so close, the photographs are unavoidably intimate. A sailor does not glance at these pictures, he studies them. Every detail is familiar. He knows the expressions, the clothing, the backgrounds. The images anchor him to a world that no longer feels entirely real. Some sailors tape calendars to the overhead, hand-drawn grids marking off the days. Each morning they cross out another square, a small ritual that measures progress toward the end of the patrol. Others tape motivational phrases, jokes or drawings made by their children. The overhead becomes a private gallery, visible only to the sailor himself and perhaps the occasional shipmate who leans over to borrow a book or ask a question before the curtain is drawn again. The mattress itself is foam, about 2 to 3 inches thick. It offers minimal cushioning. The metal pan beneath is hard and cold. Some sailors bring their own sleeping bags or blankets from home to add warmth and a layer of familiarity. Others adapt to the standard issue navy bedding. Thin sheets, a scratchy wool blanket, a flat pillow that compresses to nearly nothing under the weight of a head. Comfort is relative. After a week, the rack feels adequate. After a month, it feels like the only place in the world designed specifically for rest. On attack submarines, where space is even more constrained, the crew often outnumbers the available bunks. This necessitates a practice called hot racking. 3 sailors share 2 racks. When one sailor finishes his watch and returns to the berthing compartment, another sailor is just waking up to begin his shift. The incoming sailor climbs into the bunk the other has just vacated. The mattress is still warm from the previous occupant's body heat, hence the term hot rack. Hot racking requires discipline and mutual respect. A sailor does not leave personal items in a shared bunk. He cannot spread out, cannot claim the space as his own. Everything must be portable, stored in a locker or sea bag. The rack is used strictly for sleep. Some sailors keep a personal sleep kit, sleeping bag or a set of sheets that they roll up and store when they are on duty, unrolling it again when they return. This provides a minimal barrier between themselves and the shared mattress, a thin layer of individual identity in a system designed for maximum efficiency. The practice is not resented. It is accepted as part of the reality of submarine service, particularly on the smaller, more agile attack boats. The crew adapts. They develop routines, systems and courtesies that make the arrangement workable. A sailor who has just finished a 6-hour watch is too tired to care that the bunk is warm. He climbs in, draws the curtain, and is asleep within minutes. The heat fades, the mattress cools, sleep continues. In some submarines, particularly older diesel boats and certain modern attack vessels, overflow berthing is located in the torpedo room. Temporary racks are strapped to the sides of the torpedoes themselves, massive cylindrical weapons that dominate the compartment. A sailor climbs into his bunk and lies parallel to a Mark 48 torpedo, a device containing hundreds of pounds of high-explosive, sophisticated guidance systems, and a propulsion unit capable of driving it through the water at speeds exceeding 50 knots. Paradoxically, the torpedo room is considered one of the best places to sleep on the boat. It is cooler than the rest of the submarine, kept at lower temperatures to protect the sensitive electronics in the weapons. It is quieter, located forward of most of the machinery. It is more spacious, with higher overheads and wider aisles. And it is darker, the lights kept dim to avoid disturbing the sleeping crew. Sailors who are assigned racks in the torpedo room often consider themselves fortunate. They sleep soundly next to tons of explosive ordnance, unbothered by the proximity to weapons designed for destruction. The torpedoes are inert, safe, cold to the touch. They are simply part of the architecture, no more threatening than the bulkheads or the deck. The berthing compartments, regardless of location, share certain characteristics. They are always slightly too warm or slightly too cold, depending on where they are situated relative to the machinery spaces. They are always dimly lit, even during the day, to allow sailors on different watch rotations to sleep at any hour. They are always quiet, not because of soundproofing, but because the crew respects the unspoken rule. Voices are kept low, movements are kept deliberate, hatches are closed gently. The compartment is a sanctuary, and everyone who enters it understands this implicitly. Sleep on a submarine is not uninterrupted. Watch schedules do not align with natural sleep cycles. A sailor may sleep for 4 hours, wake to stand watch for 6, then return to his rack for another 3 hours before waking again. The fragmentation is unavoidable. The body adapts by learning to fall asleep quickly and to wake without grogginess. Naps become second nature. The crew develops the ability to rest whenever the opportunity arises, regardless of the time on the clock or the noise level in the surrounding compartment. The rack, for all its discomfort and confinement, becomes a place of refuge. It is the only space on the submarine that belongs to the individual. Everything else is shared. The passageways, the mess deck, the head, the watch stations. But the rack, with its thin mattress and drawn curtain and photographs taped overhead, is personal. It is where the sailor retreats when the weight of confinement becomes too much. It is where he closes his eyes and for a few hours escapes into the privacy of sleep. Time on the surface is governed by the sun. Morning is the moment of first light. Noon is when the sun reaches its peak. Evening is the slow dimming that leads to night. The day is a natural cycle rooted in the rotation of the earth and the biological rhythms that have evolved in response to it. But beneath the ocean the sun does not exist. There is no dawn, no dusk, no cycle of light and shadow to mark the passage of hours. The submarine operates on a clock, but the clock is arbitrary. It measures time, but it does not create meaning. The crew follows a schedule, but the schedule has no connection to the world outside the hull. The submarine runs on Zulu time, Greenwich Mean Time, regardless of its physical location. A boat patrolling the Pacific might be directly beneath the noonday sun, but the clocks inside read midnight. The disconnect is absolute. The sailors exist in a temporal space that bears no relation to the position of the planet or the movement of celestial bodies. For decades, the United States Navy operated submarines on an 18-hour day. The logic was operational. 3 watch sections, rotating every 6 hours, with 12 hours off between shifts. The mathematics worked. The efficiency was undeniable, but the human body is not designed for an 18-hour cycle. The circadian rhythm is hardwired to 24 hours. It is regulated by internal clocks that respond to cues like light, temperature, and social activity. When those cues are removed and the day itself is shortened, the system begins to fail. Sailors on the 18-hour schedule found themselves eating breakfast at what their bodies insisted was late evening. They tried to sleep at 2 in the afternoon. They woke for their watch at times that felt random and disorienting. The body never adjusted. Each rotation brought a new misalignment between the internal clock and the external schedule. Chronic fatigue became the baseline state. Alertness was compromised, judgment suffered. The crew operated in a state of low-level exhaustion that never fully resolved, no matter how much they slept. In recent years, many submarines have shifted to a 24-hour schedule, 8 hours on watch, 16 hours off. The change improved alertness and reduced fatigue-related errors. But even with the longer cycle, the sensation of timelessness persists. There is still no sunlight to reset the circadian system. There is still no natural transition from waking to sleeping. The brain receives no cues that would normally signal the end of a day. The result is a subjective experience of time that feels neither fast nor slow, but suspended, a continuous present without clear beginning or end. The watch rotation is the only structure. Sailors divide their existence into 2 states, on watch and off watch. The world contracts to this binary. On watch, they are at their stations, monitoring instruments, maintaining systems, standing ready. Off watch, they eat, they clean, they read, they sleep. The cycle repeats with mechanical regularity. 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, whatever the rotation, it becomes the metronome of existence. The crew does not think in terms of days. They think in terms of watches. Waking up is a gentle process. There are no alarm clocks in the berthing compartments. The sudden blare of an alarm would wake everyone, not just the individual who needs to rise. Instead, a messenger of the watch is assigned to walk through the compartment, consulting a list of names and rack numbers. He moves quietly in the dim light, stepping carefully between the rows of bunks. When he finds the designated rack, he reaches up and gently shakes the shoulder of the sleeping sailor, speaking in a low voice. Time to relieve the watch. The sailor stirs. The touch is soft, the words spoken just loudly enough to penetrate the veil of sleep. There is no jarring transition. The messenger waits for acknowledgement. A nod, a murmur, a hand raised in confirmation, and then moves on to the next name on the list. The sailor lies still for a moment, orienting himself. The curtain is drawn. The overhead is close. The hum of the ventilation is steady. He remembers where he is. He swings his legs out of the rack, careful not to hit the bunk above or below, and begins the process of waking. The transition from sleep to duty is gradual. The sailor does not leap out of bed. He sits on the edge of the rack, rubbing his face, waiting for the fog of sleep to lift. He retrieves his uniform from the coffin locker, dresses in the narrow space, pulls on his boots. He steps out into the passageway, where the lighting tells him whether it is day or night. White fluorescence for day, red lamps for night. The distinction is artificial, but the body responds to it. Red light signals rest, even if the sailor is waking. White light signals activity, even if others are sleeping. The crew eats on a schedule designed to accommodate the watch rotation. 4 meals are served each day: breakfast, lunch, dinner and midnight rations. The timing of these meals is staggered, to allow all watch sections to eat without crowding the mess deck. A sailor might eat breakfast at 6 in the morning or at 6 in the evening, depending on when his watch begins. The food is the same, the ritual is the same, but the meaning of breakfast becomes detached from the concept of morning. This dissolution of temporal meaning has psychological effects. The crew loses the ability to distinguish between what would normally be considered early and late, morning and night. They know the time by looking at a clock, but the knowledge is abstract. The number on the clock does not correspond to any sensory experience. 8 in the morning feels the same as 8 at night. Noon is indistinguishable from midnight. The only difference is the watch schedule and the lighting in the passageways. Some sailors adapt to this better than others. Those who are naturally flexible in their sleep patterns find the adjustment easier. Those who are rigidly tied to circadian rhythms struggle. The body keeps trying to impose a 24-hour cycle, but the environment refuses to cooperate. The result is a persistent sense of disorientation, a low-grade confusion about the passage of time that never quite resolves. The crew learns to check the clock frequently, not because they need to know the time for practical purposes, but because they cannot trust their internal sense of how much time has passed. Days blur together. One watch rotation feels like the previous one. The routine is so consistent that individual days lose their distinctiveness. A sailor might wake and genuinely not know whether it is Tuesday or Friday. The only marker is the weekly event, field day, the deep cleaning ritual that takes place every 7 days. That is when the crew knows a week has passed. The rest of the time, the days are featureless, identical, cleaning into one another without clear boundaries. The clocks themselves are a source of quiet absurdity. The Submarine is patrolling the Pacific, but the time displayed is Greenwich Mean Time, the time in London, thousands of miles away. The sailors joke about it. They are physically in one time zone but temporally in another. The disconnect reinforces the sense that they are not part of the normal world. They're in a bubble, a sealed environment that obeys its own rules and ignores the rest of the planet. Some sailors mark the passage of time by keeping personal calendars in their racks. They cross off days, counting down to the end of the patrol. Others prefer not to think about it. They let the days pass without measurement, trusting that eventually the patrol will end and they will return to the surface. The approach varies by temperament, but the underlying challenge is the same: how to maintain a sense of temporal progress in an environment where time has been flattened into an endless, unchanging present. Sleep becomes untethered from the concept of night. A sailor sleeps when he is off watch, regardless of what the clock says. If his watch ends at 3 in the afternoon, he returns to his rack and sleeps until dinner. If his watch ends at 3 in the morning, he does the same. The body eventually learns to treat sleep as a response to fatigue rather than a response to darkness. The distinction between night and day ceases to matter. What matters is the cycle. Wake, work, eat, sleep, repeat. The dissolution of day is complete. Time no longer flows in a line from morning to evening. It circles endlessly, measured not by the position of the sun, but by the rotation of the watch. The sailors live in a perpetual present, disconnected from the rhythms that govern life on the surface. They adapt because they must. They sleep because they are tired. They wake because they are needed. The day as a concept no longer exists. When the submarine leaves port, it is loaded with enough food to sustain the crew for the entire patrol. 90 days of meals for 150 men requires a staggering amount of supplies. Every inch of available storage is used. Dry goods are stacked in the designated storerooms. Frozen meat is packed into the walk-in freezers. Canned vegetables are organised by type and meal plan. But even with careful planning, there is not enough dedicated storage space. The overflow must go somewhere. For the first 2 weeks of the patrol, food is stored in the passageways. Cans of tomatoes, sacks of flour, boxes of cereal, cartons of powdered milk. These are stacked along the walls and laid out on the deck in neat rows. The crew walks on top of their provisions. They step over cans of peas and bags of rice as they move from one compartment to another. The passageways become temporary warehouses, and the sailors become pedestrians in a supermarket aisle that never closes. This is not an inconvenience. It is expected. The crew understands that the food supply is finite and must be protected. They step carefully, avoiding the stacks. They do not complain about the obstruction. The presence of the food is reassuring. It is a tangible reminder that the boat is well provisioned, that there is no danger of running out, that the Navy has accounted for every meal and every snack for the next 3 months. As the days pass, the stacks shrink. The cooks pull supplies from the passageways first, working through the accessible inventory before moving to the more organised stores in the dedicated compartments. Each can that is opened and emptied, each sack that is torn and poured, each box that is consumed reduces the volume of food in the corridors. The floor begins to reveal itself. The space opens up. By the end of the second week, the passageways are clear, and the crew can walk without obstruction. The disappearance of the food from the passageways is a milestone. It marks the transition from the early phase of the patrol to the middle phase. The fresh provisions are gone by this point. The last apple has been eaten. The last carton of real milk has been poured. The eggs are now powdered. The bread, which was baked fresh for the first few days, is now made from frozen dough or mix. The menu shifts from fresh to preserved, and the crew notices. The quality of the food is still good. Submariners are known to have the best food in the Navy, and this reputation is earned. The cooks are skilled. The ingredients, though, increasingly reliant on cans and freezers, are prepared with care. But there is a psychological shift when the fresh food runs out. The meals become less varied. The colours on the plate are less vibrant. The textures are softer. The flavours more uniform. The crew adapts, but they remember what fresh vegetables taste like. They remember the crunch of a real apple, the sweetness of a ripe orange, the richness of whole milk. Food becomes a marker of time more reliable than any calendar. The crew knows where they are in the patrol by what appears on their plates. Week 1, fresh salad, real eggs, milk in cartons. Week 2, the last of the fruit, scrambled eggs that still taste real, bread that was baked this morning. Week 3, powdered eggs, canned vegetables, shelf-stable milk. Week 4 and beyond, everything comes from a can, a freezer, or a packet. The progression is predictable, and the crew uses it to gauge how much of the patrol has passed and how much remains. The cooks do what they can to maintain morale. They rotate the menu carefully, ensuring that no meal is repeated too frequently. They introduce special meals on the designated days: pizza night, burger night, taco night. These themed dinners give the crew something to anticipate. Saturday night is traditionally pizza night. The crew knows this. They look forward to it. The pizza is not delivery and it is not gourmet, but it is hot and cheesy and different from the standard rotation of meat, starch and vegetable. It is enough. The mess deck is the only place where the entire crew gathers. It is a large compartment with long tables bolted to the deck and benches on either side. The space serves multiple functions: dining area, meeting room, recreation hall. When meals are being served, the tables are full. Sailors sit shoulder to shoulder, eating quickly, talking in tall, low voices. The conversations are repetitive. The jokes are familiar. Everyone knows everyone's stories. But the act of eating together in a shared space is a ritual that maintains the social fabric of the crew. The cooks work around the clock, preparing meals in shifts to accommodate the 4 feeding times each day. The galley is small, cramped, hot. The cooks move with practiced efficiency, pulling ingredients from storage, preparing dishes in industrial quantities, timing everything to ensure that the food is ready when the crew arrives. The galley is one of the most important spaces on the boat. A well-fed crew is a functional crew. Hunger erodes morale faster than almost anything else. The cooks understand this. They take pride in their work. Mid-rats, midnight rations, are a key part of the routine. Sailors who are off watch during the late hours can come to the mess deck and find a small meal waiting. Sandwiches, soup, leftovers from dinner, sometimes fresh pastries if the cooks have had time to bake. Mid-rats are not mandatory, but many sailors attend even if they are not particularly hungry. The meal breaks the monotony of the long night hours. It provides an excuse to leave the berthing compartment, to socialise, to move. The food itself is secondary. The ritual is what matters. The cooks also use food to mark the passage of time in more subtle ways. They bake bread in the morning hours, filling the ventilation system with the smell of yeast and warmth. The scent drifts through the submarine, reaching the berthing compartments where sailors are waking from sleep. The brain registers the smell and associates it with morning. It is a manufactured cue, but it is effective. The body responds, the appetite stirs. The crew begins to think of the coming day, even though there is no day in the conventional sense. Cinnamon rolls are baked on Sundays. The smell is unmistakable, sweet, rich, almost overpowering in the confined space. Sailors who are asleep wake and follow the scent to the mess deck. The rolls are eaten quickly, passed from hand to hand, consumed while still warm. The ritual is brief, but it is meaningful. It is a small luxury in a world where most comforts have been stripped away. It is a reminder that someone is thinking about the crew's well-being, that care is being taken to make life bearable. As the patrol continues, the food supply becomes a subject of casual observation. The freezers are checked. The cooks announce that certain items are running low. The crew adjusts expectations. If the hamburger buns are gone, burgers are served on bread. If the canned corn is exhausted, it is replaced with canned peas. The substitutions are minor, but they are noticed. The menu becomes less flexible. The meals become more repetitive. The crew accepts this without complaint. It is part of the rhythm of the patrol. By the final weeks, the variety is significantly reduced. The freezers are nearly empty. The canned goods are down to the least popular items, the vegetables no one requested, the sauces no one liked. The cooks work with what remains, preparing meals that are nutritious but uninspiring. The crew eats without enthusiasm. They're thinking about the end of the patrol, about the fresh food waiting in port, about the first meal they will eat when they are back on solid ground. The food, which began as an obstacle in the passageways, has become a calendar. The crew has literally eaten their way through 3 months. The floor, once hidden beneath sacks and cans, is now clear. The storerooms, once packed tight, are now sparse. The patrol is ending. The submarine is returning. And the first thing many sailors think about, when they imagine stepping off the boat, is a meal made with ingredients that have never been frozen or canned or powdered. A meal that tastes like the world they left behind. There is no morning on a submarine. The sun does not rise. The air does not cool with dew. No birds sing outside the window. The transition from night to day is arbitrary, decided by the watch schedule and the lighting in the passageways. But the human body craves cues. It searches for patterns, for signals that tell it when to wake and when to sleep. Without those cues, the circadian rhythm drifts, and the crew becomes unmoored in time. The cooks understand this. They have learned through years of experience that food is not just fuel, it is also a language. The smell of a meal can communicate meaning more effectively than any announcement over the intercom. And so in the early hours designated as morning, the cooks bake bread. The process begins before most of the crew is awake. The galley is quiet, lit only by the overhead fluorescence and the glow of the ovens. The cooks mix flour, water, yeast, salt, simple bowl ingredients that have been staples of human diet for thousands of years. The dough is kneaded, shaped, Left to rise, the ovens are preheated, the loaves are placed inside and the baking begins. As the bread bakes, it releases a scent, yeast warmth, a faint sweetness from the crust as it browns. The smell is rich and complex, a combination of chemical reactions that human beings have evolved to find appealing. It is the smell of home, of kitchens, of safety. It is the smell of a world where food is prepared with care, where there is time to bake rather than simply heat and serve. The ventilation system on a submarine is designed to move air constantly, to filter it, to keep it fresh. But the system is also connected to every compartment. The air from the galley carrying the scent of baking bread is pulled into the ducts and distributed throughout the boat. It reaches the berthing compartments. It drifts through the passageways. It finds its way into the control room and the engineering spaces. The entire submarine begins to smell like morning. Sailors lying in their racks, curtains drawn, notice the scent before they are fully awake. The brain registers it on a subconscious level. The olfactory system processes the information and sends a signal. Food is ready. Time to wake. The body responds. Appetite stirs. The mind begins to surface from sleep, not because of an alarm or a shaken shoulder, but because of a smell that has been associated with waking for as long as the sailor can remember. This is not an accident. The cooks deliberately allow the scent to spread. They know that the smell of bread is more than a byproduct of cooking. It is a tool. It is a way to impose structure on a structureless environment. It tells the crew that the morning meal is approaching, that a new day, artificial though it may be, is beginning. It provides a sensory cue that the brain can latch onto, helping to reset the internal clock that has been disrupted by the absence of sunlight. On Sundays, the cooks bake cinnamon rolls. The scent is even more powerful. Sugar caramelizing, cinnamon mixing with butter, yeast working its way through dough enriched with fat and sweetness. The smell is almost overwhelming in the confined space of the submarine. It's impossible to ignore. Sailors who are planning to sleep through the morning meal wake up anyway, drawn by the scent. They dress quickly and make their way to the mess deck, arriving before the rolls have finished baking, waiting for the first batch to come out of the oven. The rolls are consumed immediately. They are passed down the tables, hand to hand, still warm enough to burn fingers. The glaze is sticky. The dough is soft. The cinnamon is fragrant. For a few minutes, the crew is united in the simple pleasure of eating something that tastes indulgent, that reminds them of holidays and weekends and lazy mornings at home. The meal is brief, but its impact lingers. The smell of cinnamon stays in the ventilation for hours, a ghostly reminder of the treat. Food, in this way, becomes more than sustenance. It becomes a means of communication between the cooks and the crew. A well-timed meal, a special dessert, a familiar scent. These are messages that say, we know this is hard. We are trying to make it better. You are not forgotten. The cooks do not have the tools to change the environment. They cannot bring in sunlight or fresh air. But they can bake bread. They can fill the submarine with the smell of morning, and that is enough. The crew responds to these efforts with gratitude, though it is rarely expressed directly. Submariners are not effusive. They do not make speeches or offer praise for routine duties, but they show appreciation in small ways. A nod to the cook as they pass in the passageway, a murmur of thanks as they pick up their tray in the mess line, a lack of complaints even when the menu becomes repetitive. The relationship between the cooks and the crew is built on mutual understanding. The cooks provide food, the crew eats without fuss, the system works. As the patrol progresses and the fresh ingredients run out, the scent of baking becomes even more important. The meals themselves are less appealing, canned vegetables, frozen meat, powdered eggs, but the bread continues. The cooks keep baking, keep releasing that scent into the ventilation, keep marking the mornings with the smell of yeast and warmth. It is a small act of defiance against the monotony, a way to preserve the illusion that time is moving forward, that each day is distinct from the one before. The crew does not consciously analyse any of this. They do not think about the psychology of scent or the role of olfactory cues in maintaining circadian rhythms. They simply wake to the smell of bread and feel for a moment that this world makes sense. The submarine is still a sealed tube of recycled air. The ocean is still pressing against the hull. The sun is still absent, but the smell of morning is present. And that's enough to orient them, to remind them that they are human, that they have bodies with needs and rhythms, that somewhere beyond the steel and the water, the world is still turning and the day is still beginning. Water is everywhere and nowhere. The submarine is surrounded by millions of gallons of seawater, an effectively infinite supply pressing against the hull in every direction. But seawater is not drinkable. It is too salty, too harsh, too full of minerals and impurities. To sustain life, the crew needs fresh water. Water that has been stripped of salt, purified, made safe, and producing fresh water on a submarine is a process that consumes energy and time. The distillation system works by heating seawater until it evaporates, then cooling the vapour until it condenses into liquid again. The salt and impurities are left behind. The resulting water is clean, potable, suitable for drinking and cooking. But the process is slow. The system can only produce so many gallons per day, and every gallon of fresh water comes at a cost: the energy to heat the seawater, the noise of the pumps, the wear on the machinery. Because fresh water is limited, it must be rationed. The crew is not restricted in how much they drink. Hydration is essential, and water for drinking is always available. But other uses are carefully controlled. Laundry is done on a schedule, and the machines are run only when there is enough water to spare. Cooking uses water, but the galley is efficient, reusing water where possible, minimizing waste. The most noticeable restriction is on showers. A shower on a submarine is not a luxury. It is a brief, tightly controlled process known as the Navy shower. The procedure is simple: turn on the water, get wet, turn off the water, soap up, turn on the water, rinse, turn off. The entire process is meant to take no more than 3 to 5 minutes. There is no lingering under the spray, no standing in the steam, no using the shower as a space to relax or think. The purpose is hygiene, nothing more. The water itself is precious. When the faucet is turned on, the flow is strong but brief. The pressure is good. The plumbing is designed to move water efficiently, but the sailor knows that every second the water runs is a second of fresh water being consumed. The habit of turning off the tap between wetting and rinsing becomes automatic. Even sailors new to the submarine duty learn quickly. The norm is enforced not by rules, but by the social pressure of shared scarcity. Wasting water is wasteful not just of a resource, but of the collective energy and effort required to produce it. The shower itself is a small compartment, just large enough for one person to stand and turn around. There is no tub, no curtain, just a drain in the floor, a shower head on the wall and a single faucet. The walls are metal, cold to the touch. The floor is textured to prevent slipping. The space is functional, utilitarian, without any concession to comfort beyond the fact that hot water is available. Hot water is one of the few physical comforts the submarine offers. The steam plant produces more than enough heat, and the plumbing system is designed to deliver hot water on demand. When the sailor turns the faucet, the water comes out hot almost immediately. The sensation is startling in its intensity. Hot water in a place where almost everything else is either lukewarm or cold. The warmth penetrates the skin, loosens the muscles, provides a brief moment of physical pleasure in an environment where such moments are rare. But the hot water does not last long. The sailor wets himself quickly, then turns off the tap. He applies soap, scrubbing efficiently, covering all the necessary areas. The soap is basic, military issue, unscented, designed for function rather than experience. It lathers easily, rinses clean. The sailor is methodical. He is not savouring the process. He is completing a task. When the soaping is done, he turns the water back on and rinses, letting the hot spray wash the soap away. Then the water is turned off. The shower is over. The entire process has taken perhaps 3 minutes. The restriction on showers is not constant. It varies depending on the state of the water supply and the operational status of the boat. Early in the patrol, when the freshwater tanks are full and the distillation system is running smoothly, showers are available daily. But as the patrol continues, or if the distillation system experiences mechanical issues, the frequency is reduced. Showers every other day, every third day, once a week in extreme cases. The crew adapts. They become comfortable with the smell of their own bodies, with the oily feeling of unwashed hair, with the knowledge that everyone else is in the same condition. Personal hygiene is maintained through other means. The the crew washes their faces and hands at the sinks in the head, using minimal water. They brush their teeth twice a day. They use deodorant, though its effectiveness diminishes without regular showers. They change their clothes as often as their supply allows, usually every few days, depending on how many uniforms they brought on board. The clothes themselves begin to carry the submarine smell, the mixture of amine and hydraulic fluid and sweat that permeates everything. Laundry is available, but it too is rationed. A sailor might wash his uniforms once a week, maybe less. The head itself is a communal space. Several sinks, several toilets, several shower stalls arranged in a single compartment. Privacy is minimal. There are no doors on the toilet stalls, only partitions. The norm is to avert one's eyes, to respect the small fiction of privacy, even when none actually exists. The crew becomes unself-conscious about bodily functions. There is no room for modesty on Submarine. Everyone eats, everyone sleeps, everyone uses the head. It is all part of the routine. Flushing the toilets is also restricted during certain operational conditions. When the submarine is rigged for ultra-quiet, the toilets cannot be used. The sound of the flush, water rushing through pipes, valves opening and closing, is too loud. It can be detected by sonar, so during these periods the crew holds it. They wait. They endure the discomfort. The restriction is temporary, lasting only as long as the silent running is necessary. But it is a stark reminder of how every action on a submarine can have consequences, how even the most basic human needs must sometimes be deferred in service of the mission. The shower, brief as it is, becomes an event. It is something to look forward to, a break in the routine. Sailors mentally prepare for it, planning when they will take it, ensuring they have clean clothes to change into afterward. The act of showering is less about cleanliness and more about the experience of hot water on skin, the sensation of being briefly physically comfortable. It is a small pleasure, but in an environment where pleasures are few, it takes on outsized importance. Some sailors describe the shower as meditative. The water drowns out the hum of the ventilation. The heat relaxes the body. For 3 minutes there is nothing to do but rinse, nothing to think about but the sensation of warmth. It is a rare moment of pure physicality, unconnected to duty or routine or the demands of the boat. When the water is turned off and the moment ends, the sailor steps out into the cold air of the compartment, dries off quickly and returns to the world of recycled air and artificial light and the endless, unchanging hum. Water, in this way, becomes another marker of the submarine's constraints. It is abundant in the ocean outside but scarce inside the hull. It is necessary but must be used sparingly. The crew learns to appreciate it not as a given, but as a resource that requires effort to produce and discipline to conserve. The Navy shower, with its strict start-stop rhythm, becomes a ritual that embodies the larger reality of submarine life. Everything is limited, everything is shared, and survival depends on the willingness to accept discomfort as the price of safety. The crew breathes air that was once water. This is not a metaphor. It is a literal description of the process that keeps them alive. The submarine carries no tanks of compressed oxygen. There is no reserve supply of breathable atmosphere. Instead, the air is manufactured continuously in real time, using machinery that splits water molecules and reconfigures their atoms into something the lungs can use. The process is called electrolysis. It works by passing an electrical current through water, breaking the molecular bonds that hold hydrogen and oxygen together. Water, H2O, consists of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. When the bond is broken, the hydrogen is released as a gas, and the oxygen is released separately. The hydrogen is dangerous. It is flammable, explosive. It is vented overboard immediately, expelled from the submarine and released into the ocean. The oxygen, however, is collected, filtered and pumped into the ventilation system. It mixes with the existing air, replacing what the crew has consumed through breathing. The machinery that performs this task runs quietly, but it runs constantly. It is located in one of the engineering spaces, a room filled with pipes, valves, tanks and control panels. The sailors who maintain the system monitor it closely, checking pressure levels, flow rates and the purity of the oxygen being produced. The process is reliable, but it is not simple. It requires fresh water as feedstock, and fresh water itself must be distilled from seawater. It requires electrical power, which comes from the reactor or the batteries. It requires functioning equipment. which must be maintained, calibrated, and occasionally repaired. The system is robust, but it is also delicate. A failure here would be catastrophic. The crew does not think about this most of the time. They breathe without conscious effort, just as they would on the surface. But they know the air they are breathing is manufactured. They know it has been processed, analysed, adjusted to the correct mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and trace gases. They know it is not the same as the air outside the hull, the air that exists naturally in the atmosphere, circulated by wind and weather, and the respiratory cycles of trees and oceans. The air inside the submarine is artificial, a product of human engineering. The carbon dioxide problem is separate but related. Every breath a human takes consumes oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. In a sealed environment, carbon dioxide accumulates. If left unchecked, it would reach toxic levels within hours. The atmosphere would become unbreathable, and the crew would suffocate not from lack of oxygen, but from an excess of the waste gas their own bodies produce. To prevent this, the submarine is equipped with CO2 scrubbers. These are large machines that pull air from the compartments, pass it through a chemical medium, and release it back into the ventilation system. The chemical most commonly used is an amine compound, a substance that reacts with carbon dioxide and binds to it, removing it from the air. The process is effective, but it produces the smell, the distinct, sharp, faintly unpleasant odour that is one of the defining characteristics of submarine atmosphere. The crew becomes accustomed to it. They stop noticing it consciously, but the smell is always there, a reminder that the air they are breathing has been scrubbed, cleaned, processed. The scrubbers require maintenance. The amine medium becomes saturated over time, and it must be regenerated, heated to release the carbon dioxide as absorbed, then cooled and reused. The process is cyclic, continuous, essential. If the scrubbers fail, the air quality deteriorates rapidly. Carbon dioxide levels rise, headaches develop, breathing becomes laboured. The crew has backup systems, redundant scrubbers, emergency procedures, but the possibility of failure is not abstract, it is a real risk, managed through constant vigilance. In emergencies or when the primary systems are offline for maintenance, the crew can use oxygen candles. These are cylindrical canisters, about the size of a large coffee can, filled with a mixture of sodium chlorate and iron powder. When ignited, the mixture burns slowly, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. The reaction is exothermic. It generates heat, significant heat. The candle becomes too hot to touch. It glows faintly in the dim light of the compartment, and it produces breathable oxygen, enough to supplement the air in a confined space for several hours. Lighting an oxygen candle is a ritual that carries a certain gravity. The canister is placed in a designated holder, secured so it cannot tip over. A fuse is lit, and the reaction begins. The crew gathers around, not for warmth. The compartment is already warm enough, but for the oxygen. The air near the candle feels fresher, cleaner. The sailors breathe deeply, filling their lungs, feeling the slight buzz that comes from inhaling air with a higher than normal oxygen concentration. It is a strange experience, both reassuring and unsettling. The candle is a reminder of how dependent they are on machinery, how fragile the balance of atmosphere is in this sealed environment. The oxygen concentration inside the submarine is kept slightly lower than it would be at sea level on the surface. This is a deliberate choice. Lower oxygen reduces the risk of fire. Fire is one of the most dangerous threats on a submarine. More dangerous than flooding, more dangerous than collision. In a confined space filled with machinery and electronics and fuel, a fire can spread quickly. It can consume oxygen, produce toxic smoke, and create temperatures that make entire compartments uninhabitable. By keeping the oxygen level just below normal, the submarine reduces the likelihood that a spark will ignite a sustained fire. The trade-off is a constant low-level sense of lethargy. The crew feels it as a mild slowing, a sense of being slightly less alert than they would be on the surface. It is not debilitating. It does not impair their ability to perform their duties. But it is present, a background sensation that becomes part of the baseline state of existence. The body adapts, but it never fully adjusts. The crew is always slightly oxygen deprived, and this contributes to the overall feeling of being slowed down, of moving through a medium that offers more resistance than the air above. The air is also dry. The humidity inside the submarine is kept low to prevent condensation, which can lead to mold, rust, and electrical problems. The result is an atmosphere that feels like a desert, though the temperature is comfortable. Lips crack, skin dries and flakes, nasal passages become irritated. The crew uses chapstick and lotion as a matter of routine, applying them several times a day to counteract the effects of the dryness. It is a small discomfort, but it is constant. Breathing is an act the crew takes for granted, just as they would anywhere else. But on a submarine, breathing is also an act of trust. The crew trust the machinery, they trust the sailors who maintain it. They trust the systems that monitor the air quality and make adjustments in real time. They trust that when they inhale, the air entering their lungs will contain enough oxygen to sustain life and not so much carbon dioxide as to poison them. That trust is rarely violated, but it is also never entirely unconscious. The crew knows what they are breathing, they know where it comes from, and they know that if the systems fail, they have only hours, maybe less, before the air becomes unbreathable. The atmosphere inside the submarine is a controlled environment, maintained within strict parameters. The oxygen level is monitored continuously, the carbon dioxide level is checked hourly, the temperature and humidity are regulated, the pressure is kept stable, the air is filtered to remove particles and contaminants. It is, in many ways, a better controlled atmosphere than the one outside the hull. It is cleaner, more predictable, less subject to the variations of weather and altitude. But it is also entirely artificial, a product of machines and chemicals and the constant labour of the crew who keeps those machines running. The sailors breathe. They do not think about the process. They do not marvel at the chemistry. They simply inhale and exhale over and over, trusting that the next breath will be there, that the air will hold, that the machinery will continue to function. And it does. For 90 days, the systems run without fail. The oxygen is produced, the carbon dioxide is scrubbed, the crew breathes and survives and continues. In the beginning, the submarine feels vast. There are compartments to explore, passageways to learn, systems to understand. The crew moves through the boat with curiosity, mapping the layout in their minds, discovering the spaces where they will live and work for the next 3 months. But as the weeks pass, the submarine does not feel vast anymore. It feels small, it feels confining, and eventually it feels like the only world that has ever existed. The sailor's universe contracts. At first, it is the entire boat, bow to stern, top to bottom. Then it shrinks to the areas relevant to his duties, his watch station, the berthing compartment, the mess deck, the head. Then it shrinks further, to the 100-foot path between his rack and his station, the route he walks several times a day, every day, without variation. This path becomes his entire world. Everything outside of it becomes abstract, theoretical, unnecessary. The crew knows each other too well. They've heard every story, every joke, every complaint. They know how each man chooses food, how he breathes when he sleeps, how his footsteps sound in the passageway. They know who snores, who talks in his sleep, who takes too long in the shower. They know who is cheerful in the morning and who is irritable, who is quiet during meals and who fills the silence with chatter. There are no secrets. There is no anonymity. The social environment becomes as confined as the physical space. Conversations cycle. A sailor tells a story about his hometown, his family, his time in boot camp. Another sailor nods, having heard the story 3 times already. The jokes become familiar, the punchlines anticipated. The crew develops a shared language of references and repeated phrases, a verbal shorthand that would be incomprehensible to anyone outside the boat, but is perfectly clear to everyone inside. They are not bonding so much as wearing grooves into each other's presence, like water carving channels in stone. Conflict is dangerous in a sealed environment. There is no walking away. There is no going outside to cool off. If 2 sailors argue, they will see each other again in an hour, maybe less. They will pass in the narrow corridors. They will sit across from each other at meals. They will sleep in racks separated by a few feet of steel. The potential for ongoing tension is high, and the consequences are corrosive. The crew cannot afford to let disputes fester. So the culture emphasizes tolerance. Disputes are diffused quickly. If voices are raised, others step in to mediate. The goal is not to resolve the underlying issue. Often the issue is trivial, born of fatigue or frustration rather than genuine grievance, but to restore calm. Apologies are offered, even if grudging. Acknowledgements are made. The crew moves on. The alternative is unthinkable, a boat divided against itself, simmering with resentment, unable to function as a unit. This enforced harmony requires discipline. It requires sailors to suppress irritation, to let small offences pass without comment, to accept the flaws and quirks of their shipmates without judgment. It requires a kind of social endurance, a willingness to coexist peacefully even when the proximity is unbearable. The crew learns this not through training but through necessity. The boat teaches them. The environment imposes its own rules. Tolerance extends to personal habits as well. Some sailors are messy. They leave their belongings in the passageways. They forget to clean up after themselves in the head. They fail to secure their gear properly. In a larger world, these habits might be annoying but tolerable. On a submarine, they become magnified. A wet towel left on a bunk can soak into someone else's mattress. A tool left on the deck can be stepped on, causing injury or damage. The crew polices itself gently, reminding each other of the standards, enforcing the norms without resorting to formal discipline. The shrinking world also manifests in the mind. The crew stops thinking about the surface. They stop imagining what they will do when the patrol ends. These thoughts are too distant, too abstract. The future is not real. The only reality is the present moment, the current watch, the next meal. Time collapses into an endless now, and the sailors exist within that now without expectation or anticipation. They simply endure. Books are traded obsessively. A novel makes the rounds, through the crew, passed from hand to hand until the cover is loose and the pages are dog-eared. Some sailors read the same book multiple times, not because they enjoy it, but because it is the only book they have access to at the moment. Reading provides an escape, a way to leave the submarine mentally, even when the body is confined. The stories in the books become as familiar as the stories the crew tells each other, but they are still preferable to staring at the overhead or listening to the hum. Movies are played on a loop in the wardroom and the crew's mess. The same films are watched repeatedly. Sailors can recite lines of dialogue from memory. They know every scene, every shot, every moment of the story, but they continue to watch because the screen provides a window to the outside world. It shows trees, sunlight, open spaces, cars moving on highways. These images are hypnotic. The crew watches not for the plot, but for the visuals, for the reminder that such places exist. Video games, where available, are prized possessions. Handheld devices are passed around, borrowed and returned with care. The games provide an interactive escape, a way to occupy the mind without requiring physical space. Sailors play for hours, losing themselves in the mechanics of the game, the challenges and rewards, the sense of progress and achievement that the game provides, but the submarine does not. The crew develops routines within routines. Small rituals that give structure to the structureless days. A sailor might always eat his meals in the same seat at the mess deck. He might always check the message board at the same time each day. He might always stop by the galley for a cup of coffee at the midpoint of his watch. These rituals are meaningless in themselves, but they provide a sense of control, a way to impose order on an environment that feels increasingly chaotic the longer the patrol continues. The world outside the hull becomes theoretical. The crew knows intellectually that the ocean is there, that land exists somewhere, that people are living their lives on the surface, but this knowledge is not visceral, does not feel real. The submarine is real, the steel is real, the hum is real, everything else is memory, imagination, speculation. The crew exists in a bubble, disconnected from the world they came from and will eventually return to. By the midpoint of the patrol, the sailors have fully adapted. They no longer think of the submarine as a place they are visiting. It is home. The racks are their beds. The mess deck is their dining room. The passageways are their streets. The ocean outside is irrelevant. The surface world is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the boat, the crew, the routine. The world has shrunk to a tube of steel, and within that tube, life continues with a calm, patient endurance that asks nothing more than to survive until the day comes to surface again. The order is passed quietly, almost in a whisper. Rig for ultra quiet. The announcement does not come over the intercom. It is relayed by messengers moving through the compartments, speaking softly to the crew, ensuring that everyone understands what is required. The submarine must become silent. Not just quiet, but silent in a way that erases its presence from the ocean. The reason for the order varies. Sometimes it is a drill, a test of the crew's ability to operate in stealth. Sometimes it is operational, a response to a detected threat, another submarine, a surface ship, a sonar contact whose identity is uncertain. Sometimes it is simply a matter of positioning, moving into an area where silence is tactically advantageous. The specifics do not matter to the crew. What matters is the immediate reality. The boat must stop making noise, and the crew must help it do so. The transformation begins with the machinery. Non-essential systems are shut down. Fans that have been running continuously for weeks slow to a halt. Pumps that have been cycling water through pipes go quiet. The galley equipment is turned off. The laundry machines stop. The hum, the constant baseline noise that has become the soundtrack of submarine life, begins to fade. The pitch drops. The volume decreases. The boat becomes quieter than it has been since leaving port. The crew is briefed on the restrictions. No walking unless absolutely necessary. Footsteps, even soft ones, create vibrations that travel through the hull and into the water. No flushing toilets. The hydraulic noise of the flush is too loud. No showers. The sound of running water and the activation of pumps would compromise the silence. No dropping tools, no slamming hatches, no moving heavy equipment. Every action must be deliberate, slow, controlled. The goal is to eliminate every source of sound that could betray the submarine's location. Sailors return to their racks. Those who are off watch climb into their bunks, draw the curtains, and settle in for what might be hours of enforced stillness. There is nothing else to do. The mess deck is closed. The recreation areas are off limits. Movement is restricted. The boat has become a library, a monastery, a place where vigilance is not just encouraged but required. The crew lies in their racks, reading or sleeping or simply staring at the overhead, waiting for the order to return to normal operations. The atmosphere changes. With the fans slowed the air becomes stagnant. It does not circulate as vigorously. The temperature rises slightly. The compartments feel closer, more oppressive. The crew notices the stillness not as an absence of noise, but as a presence of quiet, a heavy, thick silence that seems to press down on them. Breathing becomes louder. The rustle of a page turning sounds sharp in the dead air. The creak of a rack as someone shifts position is startlingly clear. Conversation is conducted in whispers. Sailors who need to communicate do so in low voices, barely more than exhales. The words are chosen, carefully stripped down to the essential information. There is no small talk. There is no joking. The social norms of the submarine, which usually allow for casual banter and the relief of tension through humour, are suspended. The crew is focused, serious, aware that every sound matters. The control room operates with the same discipline. Orders are given in murmurs. Reports are delivered in the quietest voice that can still be heard. The crew moves with exaggerated care, placing tools down gently, turning valves slowly, checking instruments without making unnecessary contact with the metal surfaces. The watchstanders communicate with hand signals when possible, reducing even the need for whispered speech. The boat is being sailed as much by gesture as by command. Outside the hull, the ocean continues its work. At depth, the pressure is immense. The water presses against the steel with a force measured in thousands of pounds per square inch. The hull, designed to withstand this pressure, compresses slightly. The steel flexes, groans, adjusts. The sounds it makes, low, resonant, almost musical, are unavoidable. They are structural, not operational. The crew cannot prevent them. They simply accept that the boat itself is a living thing, responding to the environment, communicating its own distress or stability through the language of metal under strain. These groans are startling at first. Sailors new to depth hear them and tense, uncertain whether the sounds indicate danger. But the veterans know better. The hull is supposed to make these noises. They are the sound of the submarine doing its job, of the steel holding back the ocean. Over time, the groans become rhythmic, almost comforting. They are proof that the boat is intact, that the pressure is being managed, that the crew is safe despite the crushing weight of the water above. The silence is paradoxically loud. Without the constant hum of machinery, other sounds emerge. The sailors hear their own heartbeats. They hear the sound of their clothing shifting against their skin. They hear the faint click of a watch ticking on someone's wrist. They hear the breathing of the man in the rack above or below, the slow inhale and exhale that marks the passage of seconds. The world becomes intimate, reduced to the scale of the body and the immediate surroundings. time slows. Without the usual cues, meals, watch changes, the activity of the crew, the hours stretch. A sailor lies in his rack, reading the same page over and over, unable to concentrate, aware only of the stillness and the waiting. He checks his watch. 5 minutes have passed. He checks again. Another 5. The patrol, which already felt long, now feels interminable. The silence imposes its own weight, a psychological burden that is harder to bear than the physical confinement. But there is also a strange peace in the silence. The pressure to perform, to move, to engage is lifted. The crew is not expected to work during ultra-quiet unless they are on watch. They are expected to rest, to remain still, to simply exist without action. For some sailors, this is a relief. The constant activity of submarine life, the endless cycle of watches and meals and maintenance, is exhausting. The enforced rest, though uncomfortable, is also an opportunity to stop, to breathe, to let the mind drift without purpose. Sleep comes easily for some. The stillness, the darkness behind the drawn curtains, the absence of stimulation, all of these create conditions conducive to deep rest. Sailors who have been running on fragmented sleep for weeks find themselves sinking into unconsciousness without resistance. The body, deprived of activity, takes the opportunity to recover. Dreams are vivid, uninterrupted, strange. For others, sleep is impossible. The silence is too oppressive. The awareness of the situation, the submarine hiding, the potential threat outside, the need for absolute quiet keeps the mind alert. These sailors lie awake, listening, hyper-aware of every sound they make, every breath, every shift of position. They think about the ocean outside, the darkness, the pressure. They think about what it would mean if the boat were detected, if the mission were compromised, if the silence were broken not by the crew, but by something external, a torpedo, a depth charge, a catastrophic failure. These thoughts are intrusive, unwelcome, but difficult to suppress in the stillness. The order to rig for ultra-quiet can last for hours or even days. The duration depends on the tactical situation, on the decisions made by the captain and the officers in the control room. The crew is not always informed of the reason or the expected duration. They simply wait. They trust that the order will be lifted when it is safe to do so. Until then, they remain still, quiet, patient. When the order is finally lifted, the transition is gradual. The fans are restarted, slowly at first, building back to full speed over the course of minutes. The hum returns, filling the compartments, restoring the baseline noise that the crew has learned to associate with normalcy. The restrictions are eased. Sailors are allowed to move again, to use the head, to eat. The mess deck reopens. The galley resumes operation. The boat returns to its usual state of controlled, organised activity. The crew does not celebrate the return to normal. They simply resume their routines. The experience of ultra-quiet is filed away, added to the catalogue of things that happen on a submarine, neither remarkable nor traumatic. It is part of the rhythm of patrol life, one more variation in the endless cycle of duty and rest. The sailors return to their racks or their stations, the hum resumes its place as the soundtrack of their existence, and the boat continues its journey through the dark, patient ocean. There is no sun to set, no dusk to signal the end of the day. The submarine operates in perpetual artificial light, fluorescent tubes casting their flat white glow over every compartment. But the human body craves cycles, rhythms, a sense that time is moving in a pattern that makes sense. And so the crew imposes a cycle where none naturally exists. They create night. The process is called rigging for red. It happens at designated hours, usually aligned with the evening on the watch schedule. The white overhead lights in certain compartments are switched off. In their place, red lamps are activated. Low-intensity bulbs that cast a dim, warm glow across the passageways and workspaces. The light is soft, barely enough to see by. It does not illuminate so much as suggest shapes, outlines, the pitter, presence of objects and a people without revealing them fully. The purpose is practical. Red light preserves night vision. In the control room, where watchstanders may need to look through periscopes or operate in low-light conditions, it is essential that their eyes remain adapted to darkness. White light destroys that adaptation instantly, requiring several minutes for the eyes to readjust. Red light, by contrast, has minimal impact on the rods in the retina. the cells responsible for vision in low light. A sailor can work under red light for hours and still retain his ability to see in near darkness. But the red light serves another purpose, one that is less tactical and more psychological. It signals rest. The body responds to the colour red with a subtle shift in alertness. The mind interprets the dim, warm glow as a cue that activity should slow, that the day is ending, that sleep is approaching. The effect is not dramatic, but it is real. The red light creates an atmosphere of drowsiness, a sense that the world has softened and quieted, even though the machinery continues to hum and the watch rotation continues without pause. The crew moving through the passageways during red light hours walks more slowly. Voices are kept lower, not because of any formal rule, but because the environment seems to demand it. The red glow makes the submarine feel smaller, more enclosed, more womb-like. The harsh edges of the steel bulkheads are softened. The narrow corridors become less oppressive. The space feels safer, warmer, more intimate. In the berthing compartments, the red light is minimal. Most sailors prefer to keep their curtains drawn regardless of the lighting outside. The racks are dark behind the vinyl panels, lit only by personal reading lamps if the sailor chooses to use them. But even with the curtains closed, the crew is aware of the red light. They see it when they step out to use the head or to move to their watch station. They register it as a signal that the rest of the boat is in night mode, that they are part of a collective rhythm, a shared attempt to impose order on the timeless environment. The red light does not eliminate the fluorescent glare entirely. Some compartments remain in white light at all hours. Engineering spaces, the galley, areas where detailed work must be performed, and full visibility is required. But the passageways, the control room and some of the common areas shift to red, creating a division within the boat. Day spaces and night spaces, work areas and rest areas. The distinction is subtle, but it is enough to give the crew a sense of temporal structure. Sleep during red light hours is not universal. The watch rotation continues as it always does. Sailors wake to relieve their counterparts, moving through the red-lit corridors to their stations. But the red light tells them, on a subconscious level, that this is the harder shift, the night watch, the hours when alertness is most difficult to maintain, when the body most insistently demands rest. The crew on night watch fights this demand. They keep themselves awake through discipline, through movement, through the constant monitoring of instruments and systems that require attention, even when the mind wants to drift. For those who are off watch, the red light hours are a gift. The dim glow makes it easier to fall asleep. The body, which has been confused by the constant white light and the absence of natural cycles, responds to the red as it once responded to twilight. Melatonin production increases slightly. The heart rate slows. The mind begins to disengage from the external world. Sleep comes more easily during these hours than it does during the bright, white-lit day. The transition from white to red and from red back to white is gradual. The lights do not switch off all at once. The change happens compartment by compartment, section by section, giving the crew time to adjust. A sailor walking through the boat during the transition might pass from a white-lit galley into a red-lit passageway, then into a white-lit engineering space, then back into red. The alternation is disorienting at first, but it becomes familiar. The crew learns to navigate by the colour of the light as much as by the layout of the boat. The red light also affects the social atmosphere. Conversations during these hours are quieter, more reflective. Sailors who gather in the crew's mess to watch a movie speak in lower tones. The jokes are less boisterous. The laughter is softer. The red light seems to impose a kind of reverence, a sense that the hours of rest should be respected even if not everyone is resting. The crew becomes more courteous, more aware of each other's need for quiet. There is something ancient about the red light, something that taps into older patterns of human behaviour. For millennia, humans lived by firelight in the evenings, red, flickering, warm. The light signalled safety, gathering, the end of the day's labour. The red lamps on the submarine evoke that same feeling even though the crew is not sitting around a fire. They are in a steel tube beneath the ocean, but the colour of the light triggers a deep evolutionary response. The body knows what red light means. It means night. It means rest. It means safety and darkness. Not every sailor responds to the red light in the same way. Some find it soothing, a welcome break from the harshness of the fluorescent glare. Others find it depressing, a reminder of how far they are from natural light and natural rhythms. The dim glow can make the submarine feel more confining, as though the walls are closing in. For these sailors, the red light hours are the hardest part of the day. They wait for the white lights to come back on, for the brightness that, while artificial, at least feels more like normal waking life. The red light also affects vision in subtle ways. The dim glow makes it harder to see fine details. Text is more difficult to read. Faces are harder to recognise. The crew moves through the passageways with a slight hesitance, not entirely sure of their footing, relying on memory and familiarity to navigate. The submarine, which is already a place of restricted visibility, becomes even more so during the red light hours. The world shrinks further. The crew moves through a landscape of shadows and vague shapes, trusting that the environment is stable, that nothing has changed since the last time they walked this path. When the red light is finally replaced by white, the transition feels abrupt. The harsh glare floods the compartments, banishing the shadows, revealing every detail with unforgiving clarity. The crew blinks, adjusts, accepts the return of day. The cycle continues. White light, red light, red light, over and over, day after day, a manufactured rhythm in a place where no natural rhythm exists. The crew adapts. They learn to read the light as they would once have read the sky. And they sleep when the light tells them it is time to sleep, trusting that the cycle, though artificial, is enough to keep them tethered to the idea that time is still moving, that the day is still turning, that somewhere beyond the steel and the water, the sun is still rising and setting as it always has. Once a week, the routine shifts. The submarine undergoes a transformation that has nothing to do with machinery or navigation or tactical operations. It is cleaned, thoroughly, obsessively. Every surface, every handle, every inch of deck tile is scrubbed. The event is called Field Day, and it is as much a ritual as a practical necessity. The announcement comes early in the morning, or what passes for morning on the submarine. The crew is informed that Field Day will take place after the midday meal. Watchstanders are exempt while on duty, but everyone else is expected to participate. There are no exceptions. Field Day is mandatory, and it is taken seriously. The preparation begins with the distribution of cleaning supplies. Buckets are filled with water mixed with industrial cleaner. Rags are handed out, along with brushes, mops, and scrubbing pads. The crew divides the boat into sections, each assigned to a group of sailors. The berthing compartments, the mess deck, the passageways, the head, every space is claimed by someone who will be responsible for its cleanliness. The division is informal but understood. Senior sailors supervise, junior sailors do the bulk of the work. The cleaning begins, the crew move through the boat with methodical efficiency. They wipe down the bulkheads, removing the thin film of oil and grime that accumulates despite the air filtration. They scrub the deck tiles, which are textured to prevent slipping and therefore difficult to clean. They polish the handrails, the hatches, the equipment housings. They clean the overhead, reaching up with rags to wipe away dust and condensation. No surface is ignored. The berthing compartments receive special attention. The racks are inspected for cleanliness. Mattresses are lifted to check for contraband or forgotten items in the coffin lockers. The curtains are wiped down. The deck beneath the racks, which is difficult to reach, is swept and mopped. The smell of cleaning solution fills the air, temporarily overpowering the usual submarine smell. The compartment feels fresher, lighter, as though the act of cleaning has removed not just dirt, but some intangible weight. The mess deck is scrubbed until the tables shine. The benches are wiped down. The deck is mopped, then mopped again. The galley, which is cleaned daily as a matter of routine, receives an even deeper cleaning. The ovens are inspected. The refrigerators are emptied and wiped out. The stainless steel surfaces are polished until they reflect the overhead lights. The cooks take pride in this work. The galley is their domain, and its cleanliness is a matter of professional honour. The head is cleaned with particular care. The sinks, toilets and showers are scrubbed with disinfectant. The mirrors are polished. The deck is mopped thoroughly, ensuring that no moisture remains to encourage mould or mildew. The air in the head is humid, and humidity is the enemy of cleanliness on a submarine. The crew knows this. They work to eliminate every trace of dampness, every potential breeding ground for bacteria or fungus. The passageways are the most visible part of the boat, and that they receive the most scrutiny. The crew wipes down every pipe, every valve, every piece of equipment mounted to the bulkheads. They clean the deck tiles with brushes, scrubbing the texture to remove embedded dirt. They polish the handrails until the metal gleams. The passageways, when field day is complete, look almost new, clean, orderly, free of the grime that accumulates during the week. Field day is exhausting. The crew works for hours, bending, reaching, scrubbing. The air grows warm from the exertion and the lack of ventilation. Sweat mixes with cleaning solution. Hands become raw from the repeated contact with water and chemicals, but the work continues. There is no cutting corners. The cleanliness must be thorough. The boat must be spotless. The inspection follows the cleaning. Senior enlisted sailors and officers move through the compartments, checking the work. They run their fingers along surfaces, looking for dust or residue. They inspect corners and hidden areas, places where it would be easy to skip. If the cleaning is inadequate, the crew must redo it. The inspection is not punitive, but it is exacting. The standard is high and the crew is expected to meet it. The purpose of field day is twofold. The first purpose is practical. In a sealed environment, hygiene is critical. Bacteria, mold and mildew can spread quickly in the humid, enclosed atmosphere of the submarine. Illness is a serious concern. A single case of food poisoning or a contagious infection can incapacitate multiple sailors, reducing the boat's operational capability. Cleanliness is a form of preventive medicine. A way to maintain the health of the crew over the course of a long patrol. The second purpose is psychological. Field day marks the passage of time. It is a weekly event, a ritual that divides the patrol into manageable segments. The crew knows that when field day arrives, a week has passed. The knowledge is reassuring. It provides a sense of progress, a feeling that the patrol is moving forward even though the days themselves are indistinguishable. Field day is a milestone, a marker in the featureless expanse of time. There is also a sense of renewal in the act of cleaning. The submarine, which has felt increasingly stale and worn as the week progresses, is restored to a state of order. The grime is removed, the clutter is organised, the boat feels fresh, as though the crew has been given a small reset, a chance to start the next week with a clean slate. The physical act of cleaning has a mental benefit. It imposes order on an environment that can feel chaotic and oppressive. It reminds the crew that they have control, that they can shape their surroundings, that they are not entirely at the mercy of the boat and the ocean. After the inspection is complete and the work is approved, the crew is released. They return to their racks, exhausted but satisfied. The boat is clean. The week is over. A new week is beginning. The cycle continues. Field day will come again in 7 days, and the crew will repeat the process, scrubbing and wiping and polishing until the submarine is spotless once more. The ritual is simple, but it is essential. It provides structure. It provides purpose. It provides a sense of accomplishment in an environment where accomplishments are rare. The crew does not think about these things consciously. They simply clean, inspect, and move on. But the ritual is working on them, shaping their experience, giving them a framework within which to endure. Field day is not just about cleanliness. It is about survival, about maintaining the mental and physical health of the crew through the long, slow passage of time beneath the ocean. Communication with the outside world is limited. The submarine is designed to operate in currents to avoid detection, to remain hidden beneath the surface. Transmitting messages requires raising an antenna, exposing this boat to potential detection, and consuming resources that are carefully managed. As a result, communication is rare, brief, and tightly controlled. The primary means of contact is the family gram, a short text-only message sent from family members to sailors at sea. The term is a contraction of family telegram, though the messages are now digital rather than printed on paper. The format is strictly limited. 40 words, no more, no attachments, no images, no emojis, just plain text, carefully composed to convey as much information as possible in the smallest space. The messages are sent through official channels. Family members submit them to the Navy, which reviews them, screens them, and then transmits them to the submarine when the boat comes to periscope depth and raises its communications mast. The process is not immediate. A family gram submitted on Monday might not reach the sailor until the following week, depending on the boat's operational schedule and its position in the ocean. The delay is accepted as part of the system. The messages are not urgent. They are not meant for emergencies. They are meant to maintain connection, to provide a small link to the world the sailor has left behind. The content of the messages is mundane by design. family members are discouraged from including bad news. Deaths, serious illnesses, financial crises, divorces, these are filtered out by the command if they are included in a submitted message. The reasoning is practical. A sailor who receives devastating news while at sea cannot do anything about it. He cannot go home, he cannot attend a funeral, he cannot resolve a crisis. The news would only distress him, impairing his ability to perform his duties and potentially affecting the safety of the entire crew. Bad news is held until the patrol ends, delivered in person by the command when the sailor returns to port. What remains in the family grams is the ordinary. The weather at home, the children's progress in school, a pet's antics, a repair made to the house, a sports score, a note that someone misses the sailor and is thinking of him. The messages are brief, almost skeletal, stripped of detail by the 40-word limit. But they are treasured. The crew reads them multiple times, searching for meaning in every word, imagining the context, filling in the gaps with their own memories and assumptions. The family grams arrive sporadically. The submarine does not come to periscope depth on a regular schedule. The timing depends on operational needs, tactical considerations, and the captain's judgment. Sometimes the boat receives messages once a week, sometimes it is every few days, sometimes 2 weeks pass without any communication. The crew does not know when the next batch of messages will arrive. They simply wait, hoping. When the messages are received, they are printed and distributed. A sailor might receive 1 family gram or 3 or none at all. The distribution is uneven, dependent on how many family members have submitted messages and whether those messages pass the screening process. Sailors who receive multiple family grams feel fortunate. Those who receive none try not to dwell on it. The reasons vary. Family members are busy, they forgot, they did not realise the deadline for submission. The absence of a message does not necessarily mean anything is wrong, but it stings nonetheless. The crew reads the messages in private behind drawn curtains in their racks. The words are absorbed slowly, carefully. The sailor imagines the voice of the sender, a wife, a parent, a child. He pictures the person sitting at a computer, typing out the message, counting the words, choosing what to include and what to leave out. The message is brief, but it carries weight. It is proof that someone on the surface remembers him, thinks of him, is waiting for him to return. Some sailors keep their family grams, tucking them into the pages of a book or taping them to the overhead in their racks. Others discard them after reading, not wanting to clutter the limited storage space of the coffin locker. The decision is personal. For some, the physical object, the piece of paper with words printed on it, is a tangible connection to home. For others, the message is enough. Once read, it has served its purpose. The content of the family grams is rarely dramatic. Kids are doing well, weather is cold, miss you, love. Dog learned a new trick, fixed the fence, thinking of you. Basketball season started. Your son scored 10 points. We are proud. The messages are simple, almost banal, but they are also grounding. They remind the sailor that life on the surface is continuing without him. The children are growing, the seasons are changing, the household is functioning. The world has not stopped. There is a strange comfort in this. The sailor does not want to return to crisis. He does not want to imagine that his absence has caused collapse or chaos. The mundane news is reassuring. It tells him that everything is fine, that he's not needed in an emergency capacity, that his family is managing. The message says, "We are okay. You can focus on your work. We will be here when you return." The lack of bad news is both a mercy and a source of anxiety. The sailor knows that bad news is being withheld. He knows that if something serious happened, a death in the family, a major illness, a financial disaster, he would not be told until the patrol ended. This creates a low-level uncertainty. He wonders sometimes whether the cheerful messages are telling the full story. He wonders if his family is protecting him from something. He wonders if the silence on certain topics is deliberate. These thoughts are intrusive and difficult to suppress. The sailor tries to trust the system. He tells himself that if something truly urgent happened, the command would inform him. He tells himself that his family would not lie, that the mundane details in the messages are genuine, but the doubt lingers. The uncertainty is part of the cost of being at sea, part of the price of the mission. The crew does not discuss the content of their family grams with each other. The messages are private. Sharing them would feel like a violation, an intrusion into the small space of personal life that remains in the otherwise communal existence of the submarine. Sailors might mention that they received a message, might say in passing that their family is doing well, but they do not read the messages aloud or invite commentary. The family grams are sacred in a way. They are the only thing on the boat that belongs entirely to the individual. For sailors who do not receive family grams, the absence is a quiet pain. They watch their shipmates reading, folding the small slips of paper, tucking them away. They feel the absence of connection, the sense that they have been forgotten, or that their family does not understand the importance of the messages. They do not complain, they do not ask why. They simply endure, adding the absence of the family gram to the long list of discomforts that define submarine life. The messages are not a substitute for real communication. They cannot convey tone, emotion, complexity. They cannot facilitate a conversation. They are one-way, delayed and constrained. But they are enough. They are a thread connecting the sailor to the world above, a reminder that he is not entirely alone, that he is part of something larger than the submarine and the mission. The family grams, for all their brevity and limitation, serve their purpose. They sustain the crew through the long, silent weeks beneath the ocean. They anchor the sailors to the surface world, ensuring that when the patrol finally ends, there is still a home to return to. The final days of the patrol are marked by a shift in mood. The crew knows the end is near, though the exact timing is not always announced. They can feel it in the rhythm of the boat, in the increased activity of the officers, in the way the cooks begin to ration the last of the supplies more carefully. The submarine is heading home, the cleaning intensifies, field day is conducted with extra rigour. The crew scrubs the boat not just to maintain hygiene, but to prepare for inspection. When the submarine returns to port, it will be boarded by officers and inspectors who will assess its condition. The crew takes pride in presenting the boat in the best possible state. The passageways are polished, the berthing compartments are organised, the equipment is checked and rechecked. The submarine, which has been home for 3 months, must now be prepared for the scrutiny of outsiders. Personal gear is packed. Sailors retrieve items from their coffin lockers, rolling clothes and belongings into sea bags. The racks, which have been personalised with photographs and calendars, are stripped. The overhead is cleared of tape and paper. The curtains are removed and stowed. The berthing compartments, once filled with the small markers of individual identity, become anonymous again. The submarine is transforming from a home back into a vessel, a piece of military equipment that will be handed over to the next crew. The crew talks about the first things they will do when they reach port. The conversations are repetitive, almost ritualistic. They will eat fresh food, real eggs, real milk, vegetables that have never been canned. They will take long showers, with no time limit, standing under hot water until their skin prunes. They will sleep in a bed that does not sway, in a room with windows, with no hum of machinery in the background. They will see the sun, and they will breathe unprocessed air. They will walk on solid ground that does not compress beneath the pressure of the ocean. The anticipation is palpable, but it is also tinged with a strange reluctance. The crew has adapted to the submarine. They have learned to live in confinement, to sleep in narrow racks, to breathe recycled air. The boat has become familiar, predictable, safe, and the surface world, by contrast, feels uncertain. It is too open, too chaotic, too full of variables that cannot be controlled. Some sailors admit quietly that they are not entirely sure they are ready to leave. The submarine, for all its discomforts, has become a kind of sanctuary. The ascent itself is gradual. The submarine does not surface all at once. It rises slowly, in stages, as the officers verify that the route is clear, that there are no surface ships or obstacles in the way. The crew feels the change in pressure as the boat climbs through the water column. Their ears pop. The hull groans differently, releasing the compression it has held for so long. The sounds are familiar but carry new meaning. The boat is leaving the deep. It is returning to the world above. The final moments before surfacing are quiet. The crew stands by waiting for the order. The control room is tense with anticipation. The periscope is raised. The officers scan the surface, ensuring it is safe to proceed. The ballast tanks are blown, expelling water and replacing it with air. The submarine becomes buoyant, rising the last few feet to break the surface. The hatch is opened. The first thing that enters the boat is not light, but smell. The scent of the ocean, salt, iodine, a faint organic richness, rushes in through the open hatch. It is overwhelming. After 90 days of breathing scrubbed, recycled air, the natural atmosphere is almost intoxicating. The crew standing nearby inhales deeply. Some of them close their eyes, savouring the sensation. The air smells alive, complex, full of information that their noses have been deprived of for months. The first sailors to climb the ladder and step onto the deck are hit by the light. The sun is blinding. Even those who have prepared themselves, who have spent the last few days in the dimly lit compartments to acclimate, are stunned by the intensity. Colours are too vivid. The sky is impossibly blue. The water glitters with a brightness that seems unnatural. The crew squints, shading their eyes, waiting for their vision to adjust. The wind is startling. It moves across the deck, cool and fresh, carrying the smells of land, trees, earth, pollen. The crew has not felt wind in 3 months. They have not felt air that was not pushed through ducts and vents. The sensation is strange, almost disorienting. The wind is chaotic, unpredictable, nothing like the controlled environment of the submarine. Some sailors find it exhilarating. Others find it unsettling. The sounds of the surface world are overwhelming. Seabirds call overhead. Waves slapped against the hull. The rumble of the boat's diesel engines, now running to charge the batteries, is louder in the open air than it ever was inside. The crew, accustomed to the muted, filtered sounds of the submarine, is bombarded by a cacophony of noise. Everything is too loud. The world feels aggressive, intrusive, demanding attention in a way the submarine never did. The crew spends time on the deck, breathing the fresh air, letting their bodies adjust. They talk in low voices, processing the experience. Some of them laugh, a release of tension that has been building for weeks. Others are silent, overwhelmed by the transition. The return to the surface is not entirely joyful. It is complicated, a mixture of relief and disorientation, of gratitude and loss. As the submarine approaches the port, the crew can see land. The coastline appears on the horizon, a dark line that grows more distinct as the boat moves closer. Buildings become visible, then trees, then individual structures. The crew watches in silence. The land is familiar, but it also feels foreign. They have been away from solid ground for so long that the sight of it is almost surreal. The world they left behind has continued without them, and they must now rejoin it. The boat docks, the lines are secured, the gangway is lowered, the crew prepares to disembark. But before they leave, they stand on the deck for a moment looking back at the submarine. It is no longer home, but it was home. It kept them safe, it brought them back. The crew feels a quiet gratitude, a recognition that the boat did its job, that the systems held, that the steel and machinery and the skill of the sailors combined to ensure survival. The first steps onto the pier are unsteady. The crew has adapted to the gentle sway of the submarine, to the constant motion of water beneath the hull. The pier is solid, unmoving, and it feels wrong. Sailors stumble, catching themselves, laughing at the absurdity of struggling to walk on land. The ground does not sway, does not respond to the ocean. It is fixed, stays alien. The reunion with families is immediate and emotional. Wives, children, parents wait on the pier, holding signs, calling names. The crew moves through the crowd, finding their loved ones, embracing them. The greetings are joyful, but there is also a distance, a sense that the sailor is still partially in the submarine, still adjusted to the rhythms of the deep. It will take days, maybe weeks, to fully return to the surface world, to readapt to natural light and open spaces and the absence of the hum. The crew scatters, each sailor going home, stepping back into the life they left behind. They carry with them the smell of the submarine, released when they open their sea bags, and the concentrated scent of amine and diesel and recycled air fills the room. They carry the memories of the racks, the meals, the watches, the silence of ultra-quiet, the red glow of the passageways. They carry the knowledge that they survived 3 months in a sealed tube beneath the ocean, that they adapted, that they endured. The first night in a real bed is disorienting. The mattress is too soft, the room is too quiet, no hum of ventilation, no groaning of the hull, no footsteps in distant passageways. The silence wakes them repeatedly. They lie in the darkness, listening for the sounds that should be there but are not, feeling the absence of the mechanical heartbeat that has governed their existence for so long. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and broken. The body does not trust this new environment yet. The days that follow are filled with adjustment. Showers become luxurious, extended rituals. Sailors stand under the spray for 20 minutes, 30 an hour, making up for months of 3-minute rationing. They eat fresh food with an intensity that borders on reverence, biting into an apple and tasting sweetness that no canned fruit could replicate, drinking milk that has never been powdered, eating eggs that were never frozen. The flavours are almost overwhelming. The body, accustomed to the muted tastes of preserved food, must recalibrate. The open sky is still too vast. Sailors find themselves seeking smaller spaces, sitting in closets, lying under tables, choosing the smallest room in the house as their preferred refuge. The vastness of the outdoors triggers a low-level anxiety. There are no walls, no boundaries, no clear sense of enclosure. The horizon stretches endlessly, the sky presses down with its infinite blue. It is too much space, too much freedom. The submarine, which once felt confining, now feels like it was the right size. The world above has become the foreign place. Conversations with family are difficult. The sailor has lived through an experience that cannot be easily explained. How do you describe the dissolution of time to someone who has lived by days and weeks? How do you convey the intimacy of sleeping inches from 50 other men, the strange peace of ultra-quiet, the way the smell of baking bread became the only marker of morning? The words feel inadequate. The experiences are too specific, too deeply felt. The sailor tries, stumbles, gives up. Eventually he stops trying to explain. The patrol becomes something he carries alone, but there is also relief. The sailor sleeps in a bed that does not require him to navigate a narrow entrance. He walks through rooms with ceilings high enough that he can stand fully upright, arms extended, without touching anything. He breathes air that has never been processed, air that carries the sense of seasons and weather and growing things. He watches the sun move across the sky, marking the passage of time in the way humans have marked it for millennia. The natural rhythms begin to reassert themselves. Slowly the body readjusts. The circadian system realigns with the sun. Sleep consolidates into longer, more restful periods. The hyper-awareness of sound fades. The sailor stops waking at every unfamiliar noise, stops listening for the hum that is no longer there. The surface world stops feeling alien. It becomes familiar again. Though never quite the same as it was before, some sailors find they miss the submarine. They miss the simplicity of the routine, the clarity of purpose, the deep camaraderie that comes from shared confinement. They miss the way problems were immediate and solvable, the way the boat demanded attention and gave meaning to every hour. The surface world, by contrast, is complicated. It is full of choices, responsibilities, uncertainties that cannot be resolved through discipline and procedure. The submarine was hard, but it was also simple. The world above is easier, but it is also more confusing. Others are grateful to be home and have no desire to return. They have given their 90 days, they have fulfilled their duty, they have proven to themselves that they can endure, that they can adapt, that they can survive in an environment that most humans will never experience. That knowledge is enough. They re-enter their civilian lives, carrying the experience as a private accomplishment, a chapter that is now closed. The submarine remains at the pier, waiting for maintenance, for the next crew, for the next patrol. It is a tool, a vessel, a machine designed for a specific purpose, but for 90 days, it was more than that. It was home. It was the entire world. The steel hull held not just machinery and weapons, but lives. Men who slept in narrow racks, who breathed manufactured air, who learned to find comfort in confinement, who adapted their bodies and minds to an existence that defied every natural human instinct. The ocean continues its work. Indifferent to the comings and goings of submarines and sailors, the deep remains dark, cold, patient. The pressure continues to press against the hull of every vessel that descends. The water does not care about the men inside, about their routines and rituals, about their struggle to maintain humanity in an inhuman place. It simply exists, vast and timeless, holding its secrets in the darkness. And somewhere beneath the surface, another crew is beginning their patrol. They are closing the hatch, hearing that final definitive thud. They are descending into the depths, leaving behind the sun and the wind and the open sky. They are learning to sleep in the hum, learning to breathe the manufactured air, learning to mark time by meals and watches rather than by dawn and dusk. They are adapting, as every crew before them has adapted, to a life that exists in the space between the surface and the abyss. The cycle continues, as it always has, as it always will. Men go down into the deep and return changed. They carry with them the memory of a world within a world, a place where survival depends on patience and discipline and the ability to find rest in the most unlikely of circumstances. They have learned something that cannot be taught on land, that humans can endure almost anything if given structure, routine, and the quiet knowledge that eventually the surface will return. Submarine waits, the ocean waits, and when the time comes, the crew will descend again, into the calm, dark deep, where sleep is not just rest but survival, and survival is measured not in victories but in the steady passage of days, marked by the hum of machinery and the patient turning of the watch.